week 6 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few quarterbacks I would drop this week. The first guy, Ryan Tannehill of the Tennessee Titans. So coming into the year, I thought Tannehill was going to be a good quarterback, obviously, for fantasy football, and even a top 10 to top 12 guy as the season went on. But so far this year, he's failed to pass 20 fantasy points more than 2 times. And now Julio Jones, we don't know how long he's going to be out for here for this team. So right here, this Titan team, they're run heavy first team, obviously, with Derrick Henry, probably the best physical running back in all of pro football. And so far, he's been the best fantasy running back easily here, has Derrick Henry so far this season. So right here, they keep feeding him 25, 30 times a game. And Tannehill, he's more of a game manager right now in terms of stats. Over the last few weeks, week 3 versus Indianapolis, like I mentioned, was his best game to date this year. 197 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and 56 yards rushing. But the last 2 weeks in pretty plus matchups, he didn't do much. Week 4 at the Jets, 298, a touchdown, 9 rushing yards, and a 2-point conversion. And week 5 at Jacksonville was the Derrick Henry show, 130 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Tannehill in that one, 197 only, and a touchdown with 21 yards rushing. So that's not going to get the job done. And now he's got a tough Buffalo defense that we saw shut down for the most part. Patrick Mahomes and that Kansas City Chiefs offense in week 6. So right here, there's going to be no use for Tannehill this week, in my opinion, versus the Buffalo Bills. And right now, he's a quarterback I would shy away from and drop. The next quarterback I would drop this week is Daniel Jones of the New York Giants. So Jones, he's been a pretty hot pickup over the last few weeks. But in week 5 versus the Dallas Cowboys, he left that ball game with a bad concussion where he got up and he couldn't even stand up. He was wobbly as he was trying to make his way back to the huddle, and he got carted off in that ball game. So Daniel Jones, he might miss a week or 2, in my opinion. That was a vicious helmet-to-helmet hit that Daniel Jones took from Jabril Cox. And right here this week, I doubt he's going to play. And it's a tough matchup too in week 6 versus the Los Angeles Rams. So maybe in week 7 versus Carolina he'll play, but that's a tough matchup as well here. And Daniel Jones, he was starting to turn the corner this season and play good football and be fantasy relevant. But right now with this injury, he's a quarterback I wouldn't wait on, and a quarterback I would drop this week. And the third and final quarterback I would drop this week, but this is probably going to be in more deeper of leagues, I would drop him, is Derek Carr, the Las Vegas Raiders. So Carr came out like gangbusters the first 3 weeks of the season. Week 1 versus Baltimore, 435 passing yards, 2 touchdowns in the minute. Week 2 at Pittsburgh, 382, 2 touchdowns and 9 rushing yards. Week 3 versus the Dolphins, 386, 2 touchdowns in the minute. Week 4 on Monday Night Football at the Chargers, 196 yards, 2 touchdowns in it though. And week 5 versus the Bears, he was non-existent in that one, 206 passing yards and in it though. So right now, defenses, they're starting to figure out Derek Carr once again this season. And he took a bad hit in that ball game as well in week 5 versus the Bears, which it was surprising to me that he got up and finished the ball game. But week 6, he's got a tough matchup at the Denver Broncos that give up the second least amount of fantasy points to quarterbacks. And right now, after 2 tough games in a row and inconsistencies here for Carr, he's a guy I definitely would consider dropping this week. And that's a few quarterbacks I would drop here in week 6 of the fantasy football season.